Okay, let's look at another one. Hazor. This is another city that Joshua talks about, and it's mentioned later in the Bible. In the biblical account of the destruction, Hazor was in the northern part of the country, and he was Hazor. The king of Hazor was one of the kings that put together the army with the other kings in Israel in order to try and stomp Joshua's northern push. It was the head of those kingdoms, according to Joshua 11, verse 10. And Joshua defeated the army alliance, but he burned only Hazor, the Bible tells us. Now, Hazor was first excavated in the 1950s during 4 different seasons, and again in 1968 and 1969 by the Institute of Archaeology at Hebrew University. And it was done so by one of the founding fathers of Israeli archaeology, Yigdal Yadin. Yadin's identified an occupation sequence beginning in the early Bronze II age, that's the early 3rd century, on the Tell, and then the Middle Bronze IIb age, about 1800 BCE. So he's noted that there's at least 2 major areas, or 2 major times when this area is occupied. In the late Bronze Age, sometime during the 13th century, there was a fire that destroyed the city that was so intense it crackled the basalt architectural elements of the palace, of the gate shrine, and the other structures, and left a large layer of ash up to 3 feet deep in place. This is a heavy-duty fire. This is not just like this building caught on fire. I mean, you had to generate tons of heat, and this is the palace. You would think that if it's just an accidental fire, the king would make sure everybody got their buckets on that one first. So, Yadin attributes this destruction layer to the Israelite campaigns led by Joshua and dated to 1230 BCE. Noting the intentional mutilation and destruction of a number of statues found in Hazor depicting Canaanite and Egyptian gods and deities, Ben-Tor discounts both the Canaanites as aggressors or the Egyptians as the destroyers in that period. In other words, why would the Egyptians, break off the heads of all their gods, and why would the Canaanites break off the heads of all their gods? It had to be somebody else. That much we can know. That's why he's thinking that it's Israelite. The invading Israelites, along with the disenfranchised elements in Canaan, seem to have been responsible for the devastation of the late Bronze Age Hazor. Although this issue is far from resolved, it's likely to continue. In second mention of Hazor is in 1 Kings 9, where Solomon builds 3 cities and 3 gates. Hazor, Megiddo, and Gezer were 3 different areas that Solomon greatly fortified during his days. And Yavin's excavation shows the similar structures. Matter of fact, they found the gates in all 3 of those now match exactly. So when we talk about the time of David and Solomon, and it says Solomon built 3 cities, and now this may sound like not a lot, but again, we're talking about 3,000 years ago. We've been reading these biblical accounts, and the critic will tell you that a lot of these stories, first of all, David was supposed to be a myth. He was just a literary type that the people coming back from Babylon used in order to rally the troops. Okay, so the idea of David and Solomon and this grand, glorious Israeli kingdom, a lot of skeptics today, a lot of biblical scholars who are antithetical to the Bible will tell you that stuff, that didn't really happen. And when the priests were writing this, it was after the Babylonian captivity. They're just trying to get Israelites to be proud of their country, so they're coming up with their own mythology. It was J.R.R. Tolkien who wanted a mythology for the English people. He was a scholar of Norse myth, and he knew of Greek myth and Roman myth. He wanted a myth for the English people, and that's what spurred him on to write Lord of the Rings. That, and he wanted a vehicle to practice his invented language of Elvish. Which is, if you know anything about languages, Tolkien was incredibly, it's just impressive that he wrote with all the linguistic syntax and everything he did. It's really impressive. He knew language. That was his field of study. But, so they're saying that the Israelites invented this, the priests invented this, David and Solomon, a grand kingdom era, right? That's the claim. Now, they were claiming that for 150 years until we start digging at these 3 cities, and we not only find out that these 3 cities exist, but they each have a gate designed exactly like the others. Right at the time Solomon should have lived. So we know the dating's right, we know that the gates are there. Does that sound like something that was invented 500 years later? Can you get that right and know that that's still in the ground? I don't think so.